Here we go, folks. We're talking horns as we do each and every Monday night here at the Voice of College Football. Lock it in for the next 60 with Matthew Miller and myself. Leave those comments and questions. The super chat's available as well. We appreciate your support. And we're talking Texas football, of course, coming off the heels of a big spring effort in Austin and some defensive linemen that Matthew's looking at after Texas has signed one. Matthew, what's going on tonight?
Nothing much, Mark. Just recuperating from our first taste of Texas football this weekend, and then I think at the time of the game kicking off, we had 133 days till kickoff. So what is that? About 130 days left now. So yeah, super excited for that.
So, folks, we're going to show how in depth we are on the Texas analysis here. We're not going to mention a certain somebody for maybe 10 minutes. We'll go 10 minutes. We can do it. You can do it. All of you. We can focus on other positions, other possibilities. We can do it, but we will get to that guy. Definitely. Okay, Matthew, Bill Norton comes in from Arizona as a defensive tackle. And what have you picked up on what he's all about?
Yeah, so this is a big pickup because after the spring game, I mean, this is what I like about Steve Sarkisian. He has told us, like, if he needs something, he's going to say it at the press conference. And he said after the spring game, and I quote, "The depth on the D-line is not where it needs to be. We don't have enough big bodies. It's simple math." And then a couple days later, you see Bill Norton from Arizona. He spent 4 years actually at Georgia. He was actually a high-level recruit coming out of Memphis out of high school. And he didn't really produce at Georgia. He had a pretty good year last year, though, at Arizona, 32 tackles, 12 and a half tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. So overall, a good year for him. He's a better run stuffer than he is a pass rusher. Obviously, you see that with the stats, but it's something needed. We've obviously lost, in my opinion, the best tandem of defensive tackles in the country with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. So it's nice to bring in an extra body to compete with Sadir Mitchell, Jare Bledsoe, and Alfred Collins. He's definitely going to be in the rotation. Obviously, I think having Johnny Nansen, who was the defensive coordinator at Arizona last year, come in and be the linebackers coach for Texas this year really helps. That relationship was really big. Actually, when Johnny Nansen was asked about Bill Norton last year at Arizona, he said, I hope he comes back. He didn't even say I hope. He said he better come back because we need him. And basically, he followed him to Texas. It took a little bit longer than us Texas fans thought, but he finally made his way to the 40 acres, and I think he's a decent rotational player for us, Mark.
So, Matthew, before we get to these other defensive linemen in question, is it a situation where you talked about they need more stability in the middle in particular? They need more bodies. They need more girth up there. But is it also that you can always use a superstar, obviously, but are they going to have the type of front line players that are top of the conference kind of players there? Or is that just flat out going to be, I don't want to call it a weakness, but not necessarily a great strength of the team, and they just want to get enough bodies to rotate through to keep people fresh?
So obviously, if someone were to jump in the portal, that was a big name and obviously a big time player as well, I think Texas would be all over it. I think you kind of saw that with Bear Alexander a little bit. 2 days he kind of was floating around where he was in the portal. I think Texas was the one name really mentioned. And he decided to go back to USC, probably money wise. They were made him happy and he was able to come back. And I think he would have helped out because he is better than the other guys we'll talk about later. But yeah, I just don't see this being obviously it's not going to be what it was last year. You had 2, according to Pro Football Focus, of the 5 highest ranked defensive tackles, 2 of them. So that's just not going to happen this year. Alfred Collins did rate pretty well. Like, I think grade was a 78. Now, in context of that, Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat were both above 90. So can Alfred Collins finally play up to the level of, let's say, 83 to an 85 type grade, according to Pro Football Focus? If he can do that, then I think it won't be a weakness. It may be a weaker part of the defense, but it won't be a weakness. Right now, it is definitely the weakness. They struggled getting pressure. I know we have a great offensive line. I think we're going to have a top offensive line in the country. But in that spring game, you could tell we're going to struggle to get pressure. They had to bring blitzes to make the quarterbacks feel uncomfortable. So that is probably the weakest part of our team right now, Mark.
Jay Toya is a player at UCLA who's entered the transfer portal. Now, he has played 29 total games. Now, I don't know if all of those at defensive line or if he was a special teams player, possibly, but most likely, definitely the last two seasons, you're looking at tackles totals that would indicate he was generally the starter there. So, your thoughts about Toya from UCLA?
Yeah, so out of the four guys we're going to mention, I think he's probably the second best player. He had 28 tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He's a good player. You can tell he's a lot more agile than Bill Norton, who we mentioned earlier and who just committed today. Bill Norton's kind of an anchor on the defense. He's good at stopping the run, but this guy's a little bit more athletic, can get after the quarterback. You're not going to have a Byron Murphy or Tavondre Sweat, Tavondre Sweat would probably be the best at getting out of the quarterback of the four guys we'll mention. He wasn't even the best out of the two. Byron Murphy is a top of freak at the NFL level. I think he'll have 7 to 8 sacks here at the defensive tackle position. So we're definitely going to miss that. Again, I just don't see us being as good, but this is, in my opinion, the second best guy. And I think it's needed, along with helps us with depth too. So it really would help out if we could grab a Jay Toya.
So we'll keep it rolling here with other possible candidates here for Texas along the defensive front. Simeon Barrow out of Michigan State.
Yeah, 36 tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Like I said, in ranking these guys, I think he's probably the second worst out of the four we'll talk about. And he's good, but he just doesn't. Again, just not gonna. There's no one in the portal that's gonna be the guys that we left or that left. Unfortunately, he would help out again, bring in a big body. But I think when you said it, Mark, I think it basically is at this point just getting depth pieces. Unless we do land the next guy that we talk about on Dominic Williams. I think he is special. He was actually the defensive defensive freshman of the year his first season with TCU. But I think Simeon Burrow would come in and be a depth piece. I don't really see him as a frontline starter here at Texas.
So Barrow's played quite a bit of football. He's been a 3-year starter, it appears, at Michigan State based on the tackles totals at 34, 40, and 36 for 3 consecutive years. And got into the backfield quite a bit, especially in 2022 with 9 TFLs as a sophomore. So he's been fairly disruptive at times along that defensive front for Michigan State. All right. Then we move on to the aforementioned Dominic Williams out of TCU, freshman All-American and All Big 12 last year as a sophomore.
Yeah, he's a very good player. When he jumped in, that was the guy that immediately flashed to me and said that Texas needs to be all over him. And just to tell you, I mean, the visits he has lined up, he's going to LSU this week, Texas this week, and Oklahoma. He's going to have Colorado in there too. It would shock me if he decided to go there. I wouldn't understand that move at this point, but if they throw enough money at him, I guess I understand why. But to me, you cannot let him go to Oklahoma. If he wants to go to LSU, fine, but you cannot let him go on the other side of this rivalry. He is a very good player. He's very talented. He's the type of guy that has the talent to be that SEC all team type of player. So hopefully we can nab him and get him to Texas. He can stay in his home state of Texas. He doesn't really have to travel that far from Fort Worth to Austin. So hopefully we can keep him up or keep him in the state and come to Texas. I think, in my opinion, he's the best out of the 4 we talked about. So he's very important to me.
So I've obviously watched games where all of these guys have played, but I'm not going to in any way pretend that I was watching Simeon Barrow or Dominic Williams or any of these guys exclusively to say I was scouting them. So I cannot offer any type of evaluation myself on these guys. Now, it is curious that you've got Williams here with fairly pedestrian numbers, but obviously he's been evaluated by people in the know that have evaluated his impact on games. And we know that, especially along the defensive front and on the inside, that statistics don't tell us a whole lot. But Barrow's had the most disruptive plays in the backfield out of these 4, if we're just looking at that. But Williams is just consensus to be the best player.
Yeah, I think it's honestly his size, and then paired with his athleticism, it kind of jumps off the tape to you. I think he's a really good athlete at the position. And kind of like Bill, like I said, with Bill Norton, you have that anchor now to where if you need to run stuffer, you have that. Whereas now you're kind of looking for that pass rusher. And I think Dominic Williams is the best pass rusher out of the group. If you wouldn't have gotten Bill Norton, I would have been all over Simeon Burrow, but I just don't see, I think he's kind of just the same type of player as a Bill Norton. So we'll have to see what happens. I mean, honestly, we would take 3. We really would. So I'll take 3 out of 4 of these guys all day, every day. We don't have the depth, like Steve Sarkisian said. Sadir Mitchell, coming in for his sophomore season, just came in overweight, Mark. Like, he's 372. He is huge. He came in out of shape. He hasn't really gotten in shape yet. That's someone that was looked out for. That's someone that was recruited highly by Georgia. It basically came down to Georgia and Texas. He chose Texas, and he hasn't really lived up to his billing yet. So hopefully he can get into shape and help out that room. Vernon Broughton, I like, but I don't love him. The only really high-end player here is Alfred Collins, and he just cannot live up to it consistently on a down-to-down basis with that talent. So it's going to be interesting. I think the edges are going to be good on this defense. When we get into the spring game a little bit more, we'll talk about one of the guys that stood out to me. And the interior, just this year, may be a weakness, and especially it's going to be weaker than it was last year, but it may be a weakness overall.
So that's the one big get today. Everyone from Arizona along the defensive front, Bill Norton. There are 3 other candidates there that Matthew just outlined along the defensive front that Texas is interested in. So when we add it all up based on transfer portal gains and losses at this point, anyone who's been in the portal and been lost of significance here?
No. Today we actually just lost Savion Red. And he was going to be our, let's see, 5th, 6th string running back. So no, there was no importance. Like, I thought we would have used him. We used him last year in the red package, where basically short yardage situations, goal line situations, and he would run. He actually did throw a pass last year versus Oklahoma. And that was kind of what we thought he was going to come do this year for Texas, because he weighs 240 pounds at 5'9.5". So we thought, hey, he's just going to be a Big Mac truck coming in goal line situations, short yardage situations, but he obviously decided he wanted to be more than that. No offense to him, but he's going to have to lose weight. If he wants to be an every down back, I think he's capable at a like a MAC type school, but he's going to have to lose 25 to 30 pounds to do that as well.
A lot of people tend to get on these athletes for moving on from team to team and school to school and not supposedly having any loyalty. But let's understand, look at the resumes of most of the players in the portal. Yes, you've got your Dominic Williams types. You've got your other guys that have teams coming after them that have a ton of options. But if you really look by and large at the guys in the portal, I'd say 75 to 80% of them appear to be getting the nudge from their current coach to say, hey, you really don't have a spot here. Look at the depth chart. And they're seeing the writing on the wall and they're moving on. Now, Matthew, I got to say, in looking at the 19 outgoing transfers, I'm a bit surprised that Jalen Catalon he never caught on, so that's not a huge loss.
No, just because of injuries, he really didn't play that much for Texas. I think he started 5, maybe 6 games. When he played, he did well, but that's been the story of Jalen Catalon's career at Arkansas. His one healthy year, he was all SEC.
Yeah.
And then from there on out, he's injury, and then when he is on the field, he's good. That's been his issue, though. And the problem is he's not even on the field half the time now. He's on the field 40 to 45% of the time. So it's not a big loss to me. We take it. Andrew Makuba comes in from Clemson, can play at safety. Xavier Filsme, the 5-star freshman that flipped from Florida late in the recruiting cycle, can obviously play safety. So we're pretty good at safety, and I understand why he decided to move on. I wish him all the best. He's a very good player when he's healthy, and I hope he does well.
All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is Horns Huddle. We do this each and every Monday. Check out our last version. We brought on some excellent guests, and we will have those guys back at various times here on our Texas channel. And here's the deal, folks. We are going to move this entire show over to the Texas channel. So we just want to make sure everybody's aware of that you will find us on the Texas channel every Monday, 7 Eastern, 6 where it counts there in Austin, Texas, 6 p.m. Central Time. So we will be alerting you as much as possible, promoting, but just we're going to not keep it here on the main channel forever. We will at some point just make it exclusive on the Texas channel. Matthew knocking out post game for us for the last couple seasons on Texas. And of course, he had a spring recap that you can check out on the Texas channel as well. And that appears to be next in line, Matthew. Arch Manning. So he goes from whatever he was thought of coming out of high school, because some, of course, he was anointed as arguably the best quarterback in the country. And of course, he's got the name. But then there are other people who saw some tape, and less about the tape that he showed, that he put on tape, and more about, well, look at this competition. It's awful. And then, there are always going to be haters and detractors that say, oh, he's overrated. He's not going to be anything. And he only gets this evaluation based on his name. But he obviously has a load of talent, and he has had the type of coaching and been surrounded by football brains his whole life to have that type of approach and mindset, and has gone to be coached by the best and mentored by the best. And he definitely looks the part.
Yeah, I was thoroughly impressed, and it's not the numbers, even though they're gaudy for a spring game. 19 of 25, 355 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then a pick when he threw a Hail Mary at the end of the game. So that's not a big deal to me. What was super impressive was the decision making. Every time I thought he's going to get flustered or just throw an airmail a pass, he would read everything correctly and then drop it down to a running back or run, or just decide, hey, this isn't the play for me. Go to the check down as a wide receiver as well. And then also the footwork in the pocket. He was fantastic at climbing the pocket. That's something that honestly Quinn Ewers still struggles with. And like you said, Mark, I think when you have 2 Hall of Fame QBs as your uncle, that's like something that they've probably drilled into him from a young age is, hey, climb the pocket. Peyton Manning's one of the best at that in the history of playing football. So it really helps out when you have him as an uncle. And then the arm strength. We've heard in practice that he had a stronger arm than Malik Murphy. That's what we heard. We heard he has a stronger arm than Malik Murphy. He has a stronger arm than Quinn Ewers. And then when you watch the game, the man is slinging it in all the time across the middle, and he definitely does. My only question is now, it's kind of the opposite of Quinn. Does he have the touch on the deep ball? I've seen the rocket down the middle of the field. I've seen the rocket down the sideline. I've seen the accuracy. I've seen him climbing the pocket. I've seen the good decision-making. Honestly, it's just touch now. If he can layer the football past linebackers and in between safeties and stuff like that, then I think you have a guy that is deserving of the best high school recruit of all time, is basically what he was heralded as. And like, people can give him crap. Maybe his name bumped up a little bit, but I heard 3-star, 3-star, 3-star. No scout for whatever network they're working on is going to be like, you know what? He's a Manning. I'm going to give him a 2-star bump. Could they have said, he's a really, really, really high 4-star and bumped him up to 5-star? Possibly. They're not bumping him up 2 stars. He has way too much pedigree to me to ever fail. I never thought he was going to fail. I thought at worst he was going to be average. But after watching this game, it's hard not to be excited. It really is. I'm not going to go crazy because it is a spring game, but just all these tools are there, and it's not about like this big stuff of, oh my God, he hit a deep ball. I would expect in a spring game you could hit deep balls. It's about the anticipation, the arm talent, and also climbing the pocket, the little things. So I was thoroughly impressed.
Yes. So I'm not going to go into a big NFL history lecture, but when there's the possibility that he can be just as good as, I don't want to put him on the level of guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame at the next level, but you know what I mean, that he is showing us that he is the potential to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. So it's just astounding to me that you can have an individual who's a college football all-time great, who played forever in the NFL. Of course, I'm talking about Archie Manning, and he got knocked around with the New Orleans Saints, played for a bad franchise, but he played in the NFL for like 15 or 16 years. And then he has 2 sons, and they win Super Bowls and they set records. And especially Peyton, of course, is the all-time passing leader before Brady surpassed him. But, have those kind of careers that are just, and Eli, despite being a less than great quarterback throughout most of his career, of course, led two of the most historic drives in the history of football to win Super Bowls that will probably propel him with all the yardage and the numbers into the Hall of Fame. And then to have a fourth that has the potential to, and again, nobody ever wants to project somebody's going to throw for like 60,000 yards in the NFL or anything crazy like his uncle did. But to have four of those guys in the same family is just crazy to me.
Well, and on top of that, your dad was a really good wide receiver and probably would have been a pretty damn good college wide receiver if not for the injury to his spine. So, I mean, they're just really good athletes. I mean, Peyton, especially, I know because he's my favorite athlete of all time. That was so cool getting Arch. The work ethic that goes into what those guys do and what I've seen them put in, it's really impressive. So, and that's the thing. That's what the first thing Steve Sarkisian said when he walked on campus is one of the hardest workers on the team, studies, junkie, loves it. I mean, that I just don't see how he fails. I don't see how he fails. It's really hard for me to see that. And then the third string quarterback goes out and plays very well too. And what really impressed me with him is, again, like the understanding of an offense. He's ahead of where Arch Manning was last year, Trey Owens. So I was really impressed. I actually think our quarterback room's better than it was last year, and last year was really good. And going into the season, I thought it was the best in the country, and the spring game just reinforced that times 100 for me.
Our buddy Mike Ford here, and we're not going to make this about the Mannings, but I have to address this.
No, he was good.
Eli did not win a Super Bowl. He kind of derped his way through while his defense won them. Okay, Mike, you need to go on YouTube after we're done, of course. You get on YouTube and you review not just those Super Bowls, but some of those playoff games and the stats and watch the games. You're off base here. You can argue that he was overrated or whatever throughout many of regular seasons and all that. Absolutely. Threw a lot of picks, all that. But
yeah, it's funny. The best playoff runs I've ever seen are the three of them, in my opinion, are Joe Flacco and both Eli Mannings. Like Joe Flacco had 9 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in his playoff games that year.
Yeah.
And Eli Manning played phenomenal. He beat Brett Favre on the road. He beat Aaron Rodgers on the other time on the road. And then he beat Tom Brady in both Super Bowls and outplayed him in both. So yeah, he played well. Obviously defense was very good, but he played very well in those Super Bowls and the playoff runs.
All right. We are talking Texas football with all of you, and please subscribe to our Texas channel if you're not watching there. We've got about 60 people on the line, so we assume most of you are on the national channel. So please check out the Texas channel. Obviously, if you like Texas football, you should be subscribed. If you are just flat out wanting to support all that we do here at the Voice of College Football, please subscribe and get over there. We would appreciate that. We've got a USC show coming up on the USC channel, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific tonight. Comments and questions, we will always take them. So, Matthew, where do we go from here? What your other spring assessments?
Yeah, so other standouts, DeAndre Moore really impressed me. He was a freshman last year, and Quinn Ewers talked about him. He said he's going to be a very good wide receiver. He's probably going to take Jordan Whittington's place in the slot, and he's more shifty, actually, than Jordan Whittington. So I think that will benefit in those short yardage situations even more than Jordan Whittington did. He had 3 catches for 93 yards and a touchdown. I was really impressed with him. And then the guy that listen, again, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but everyone who's been covering the practices have been saying the name Ryan Wingo. He had 4 catches for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he was very good. I was thoroughly impressed. Everyone's talking about how this is the best wide receiver recruit since Roy Williams, which is, if you watch Roy Williams at Texas, go just type in LSU versus Texas, Roy Williams, and go watch that game. So if he can do that, I mean, the sky's the limit for this offense. That's what I saw in this game is this team's going to be carried by their offense. I don't know how good the defense is going to be. It's not going to be bad, but could it be average? Yes. But this offense, the offensive line was thoroughly impressive. The starting unit dominated, in my opinion. The defensive line for Texas, I thought Arch Manning was good. I thought Trey Owens was good. And then obviously DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo. I didn't even mention Isaiah Bond, who also caught a touchdown as well. Amari Niblack, the transfer also from Alabama, had a nice couple plays there. This team has way more depth on offense than last year. They do. I don't think they have the top end talent, but there's 6 to 7 wide receivers that are going to see the field, and I'm confident in. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the one guy I did see, redshirt freshman Colton Vasek, 3.5 tackles for loss and 1 sack. I think you're going to see him a lot. It's going to be a lot like Ethan Burke last year for Texas, who came in and had 5.5 sacks for the team lead. And I think Colton Vasek can come in and have that same type of play on the defensive line. I think the edges on the defense are going to be great. You have Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Colton Vasek, Barron Sorrell, Ethan Burke. You're going to have a nice 5 to 6 man rotation up there. It's honestly going to be, can the defensive tackle situation just be average? And if it is, I think this defense can at least be average, because I do think the secondary has a lot of talent. They just have to show me whether they can produce. And that's another thing. I don't know. There are certain teams, certain spring games where one side of the ball is always going to look better because of who your coach is. And I'm thinking that's what happened, because Steve Sarkisian's going to want the offense to look good. Guess what? That's his side of the ball. That's his baby. We'll see what happens. And hopefully that's the case, because the secondary, again, did get lost sometimes. That scares me. And that was the weakness last year. They never really were lost last year. They just weren't great at playing the ball. That's something that we need to get better at. But those are my takeaways from the spring game right now, Mark.
I just can't let this go because Mike Ford can't let it go. You know, Mike, I just counted. I went to all-time interception leaders among passers in NFL history.
Brett Favre's number 1.
Well, Brett Favre's number 1. 14 of the top 20 are in the Hall of Fame. So these guys throw interceptions. And so Eli Manning's interception percentage is almost identical to, you probably, Mike, think this guy's a great quarterback because he is, Dan Marino's. They're almost identical. So again, I'm not claiming him to be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. He's not that good, but he was really good. And he was incredible in those 2 playoff runs. And you're bringing up Phil Simms, Mike. Yeah, he did have a great Super Bowl, but what he did in his playoff runs are nowhere close, not even in the vicinity of what Eli Manning did for the Giants. Okay. So you pretty much answered the question, Matthew, because John D'Adamo threw it out there. You know, was it Arch or was it the defense was that bad? And you outlined how impressive he looked doing all the things that he did, both arm talent, arm strength, and then also just anticipation of the throws and the decision-making and everything. So I looked at something today that was claiming, coming out of spring practice, that the Texas issue is still secondary.
Yeah, I think that's, again, it's hard. We're definitely more talented than last year. I mean, you have Michael Taft, Derek Williams, who was a freshman last year and was great, is only going to get better. You have Xavier Filsaime come in, 5-star freshman at the safety position. Andrew Makuba, who was really good at Clemson. I mean, he was so good there. He was getting, in mock drafts, he was a 3rd-round pick. So I was shocked that he didn't just declare for the draft and to come to Texas. He's going to be our safety or corner. And then you also, people don't realize we didn't have Jahdae Barron playing, who's kind of like the quarterback of that secondary. So that would have helped out a lot too. Malik Muhammad, he's kind of the same thing as Ryan Wingo was last year on the defensive side of the ball. He's the best cornerback to step on Texas as a freshman in over probably 15 years. So there's talent there. The question is, can it be brought together by Blake Gideon and those guys on the back end? Can they start to create turnovers? And you also have to get more pressure. That's something Texas has struggled with. Texas hasn't had like a true pass rusher since Brian Arakpo. Even Joseph Osai, very good player, really good pass rusher, but he was never to the level of elite. He was never a Brian Arakpo, a Sergio Kindle. So it's been, 16, 15 years since we've had someone like that. So if we can marry those two things together, that's when you become elite. If we can just hit on one of those two, I think this is an average. We can turn into an average defense. We were better than average last year. I expect us to take a little bit of a step back, but the thing is, I expect the offense to take a big step forward. I think this is going to be a top 10 offense in the country. we have way too much talent on the offensive line, way too much depth on the offensive line. And the same goes for the wide receivers and the quarterback. Like, if Quinn Ewers gets hurt, I have full trust in Arch Manning to go win almost every game on our schedule. I'm going to say probably on the road at Michigan in week 2 would be a struggle, and then Georgia at home. But every other game, I think he could win.
If Texas doesn't go to Michigan and win that game, boy, this a large portion of our chat
I know, that's
here,
all I'm saying.
they're going to go off, man. They're going to be back in national championship form. They're going to just feel it after that.
Well, and that's watching the spring game. I will say, I thought we would beat Michigan. I've kind of turned down that a little bit just because Michigan, it's kind of like the opposite of last year. I thought we matched up terrific with Michigan because we have the 2 guys up the middle to stop the run. This year, we don't have that. So if they decide to pound the rock versus us, they may be able to do that this year. That may be the issue. And this is the team to do it. You have basically, they have Jalen Milroe again at quarterback week 2 for them, and Alec Orji. They're going to want to pound the football, or if at least if they're smart, and not Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees decided to throw in that game for whatever reason. So if Alec Orji and those guys can just stuff the ball at us, they might beat us. But their offensive line also isn't as good as last year too, so that's a good thing as well.
Got Matthew Miller here and myself every Monday night, 7 Eastern time, breaking down Texas football. It is Horns Huddle right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll be on the Texas channel forever, every Monday. We'll be here on the national channel. We'll let you know when we're going to make the jump, but please make it a habit to join us on the Texas channel. Sonny Verma's got Texas breakdown videos over there as well. I will get to some at some point myself, but you got a lot of Matthew, got a lot of Sonny on the Texas channel. So, I wanted to go to the comment on the screen by Mike Fort in regards to Xavier Worthy was, of course, the headliner. We saw what he did at the Combine. We know they're recruiting out of their minds at that position, but are they going to have a guy like that as Isaiah Bond going to deliver that kind of athleticism?
Athleticism, yeah. I actually think this is deeper athletic wise room this year because you have Bond who could fly. You have Ryan Wingo, who they're saying is running really fast in practice, like is a 10-1, 10-2 guy. You have DeAndre Moore, who's also very fast, and not even to mention Jaden Blue, I guess, has been playing a lot in the slot at the running back position, and he's been cooking people, and as he should. He's going to run when he goes to the Combine. He'll run like a 4.3. So I actually think athletic-wise, this team's probably more athletic than last year. Worthy's obviously probably the best athlete out of everyone I just mentioned, but overall depth, if we're having to draft, I would take every other guy on this team over, I'd say, everyone last year. Maybe A.D. Mitchell would fall into the one of those spots at some point, but he wouldn't be the second guy I draft. I think Isaiah Bond's more athletic than A.D. Mitchell, and I mean that's to be expected. Isaiah Bond's a lot smaller, can move a little bit better than A.D. Mitchell. A.D. Mitchell's pretty big, so like I said, I don't know if we're going to have a number 1 this year, but I think we have like 6 number 2s.
Folks, we've been here all day talking college football with all of you. We did our morning show, Wake Up College Football, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We do our transfer portal update that we will take you through the rest of the week on into April 30 is the last day of the portal. So 3 p.m. Eastern Time every day with an update. Then we had Tony Siracusa on the line sorting out all that Florida State versus the ACC mess. And there was another hearing today, plus NIL and transfer portal rules changes by the NCAA. Then here we are with Texas Live with Matthew, and we've got the USC show tonight at 10 Eastern with our guys Tim and Matt. A. Schwab is saying Texas 3.5-point favorite right now, FanDuel, but yeah, I could see that going back and forth throughout the months.
I mean, yeah, I understand the line because if Texas does stop the run, I've heard from the Michigan side of the ball, I've looked a little bit. They need a wide receiver. They don't really have a wide receiver at this point. Like they need a couple wide receivers in the portal. So, and you're also going to be relying on Alec Orji to basically elevate your wide receiver room. And I just don't see that happening. So if they can't run the ball, Texas could blow them out. That's like the ones, if you're going to say if one team's going to blow out the other, Texas will blow out Michigan. Michigan's not blowing out Texas. You usually don't blow out teams running the ball unless you're doing what you did to Washington last year, which you're getting 9 yards of carry in the first half. That's not going to happen versus Texas. So we're not going to be that bad versus the run. Like I said, if we're just average, I think we should win that game, but we'll have to see.
The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos, including this one. So when you shop Amazon, please use the link that we provide. I do that looking for, thank you, John. Appreciate that. Yes, the Amazon link. Same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. All right. Texas probably has, and this is a topic that one of us is going to tackle, or together we will at some point, and maybe we're going to do it right now. In terms of if nobody's got any other comments or questions. And again, Matthew has dissected the spring game. Check out the video. It's on the Texas channel. He went live after the game. It's hard to argue that this program doesn't have the highest ceiling of any program in college football. I would argue that if you go over the last 50 years, I'm going to argue 3 other programs not above Texas. I'm just throwing them out as case studies. USC at its best. 1970s, John McKay, some of the greatest teams of all time. We could go through a litany of just ridiculous NFL talent. John Robinson, about a decade later, right after McKay, again, just, Ronnie Lott, Marcus Allen, Charles White, on and on and on and on. And then they played that well, obviously, in college, winning national championships. And then the Pete Carroll years of 9 years of dominance, where if you really dissect how good they were, even though they won only one national championship, they were like that close every year. And then you've got Ohio State, who posts most consistently elite, like never down since 2004. If you do the math, Matthew, they average 11-1 in the last 18 years. That's their average record. One loss. And then they were doing it way before that. Alabama, of course, under Nick Saban. Okay, you got the Bear Bryant era. Then you've got Nick Saban. And of course, they were the best program winning championships the last 15 years. But now we'll see what Alabama is. We'll see if they, in a tougher SEC, if they fall back to just a really good program. But Texas has what all those schools have. But number one, they've got in-state talent over all 3 of them by far. California's still really good, but it's dwindling. And money. Those are the 2 differentiation points that I would give Texas over those 3.
Yeah, I've heard this for so long. If Texas just could lock down the state and handpick who they want out of the state of Texas, you win the national championship. Like if you go look at that 2005 roster, 2009 roster, it's mostly Texas players. Ohio State, when they were really good during this, 2015 to 2020 era, a lot of Texas players are on those teams. Alabama, same thing. So if you could lock down the state hypothetically and just take who you wanted, I think Texas would be, if we were still in the top 4 era where college football playoff era was only 4 teams, I think we'd be there every year. And also, it's hard for me to say that just because I've only really ever seen it under Mac Brown. Obviously, I wasn't alive for the Darrell K. Royal era, but Mac was able to consistently basically ride in 10-2 every year is what he was averaging. But we never won enough national championships, in my opinion. We only had 2 appearances. We were 1-1 in those. So it's hard for me to say that that we're up there as how'd you put it, Mark? The, have the upper end talent program. How'd you word that?
Well, I just picked out those 3. I'm not saying, of course, Georgia fans don't get mad. I'm not excluding anybody else. Just those are the 3 that are still have that potential, but they've also shown it for long periods of time in the past, more so than anybody else that I can think of.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's up there as well. As that hurts me to say that, but I mean, they've had a pretty long stretch of just being really damn good. Obviously, they haven't won a lot of national championships in the past 20, 25 years, but they're always consistently in the top 10. Ohio State, obviously, up there as well. I think Texas is right in that mix of 5 to 6 teams. I don't think Georgia's there, seeing as they had some rough stretches at certain points. And even under Mark Richt, I don't think they even were, you can even put that in the Mac Brown era, in my opinion. I think Mac Brown's era was better than Mark Richt's era. But I think Texas is right in that conversation. And I think with the NIL, it just helps out so much more because, like you said, Texas is swimming in money, especially oil money. I mean, the state literally has it written in their legislation where we get oil money from the state every year. So it helps out. And hopefully we can, keep this train going. It's going really well in every other sport. And that's what another thing Texas fans are saying is like, we're good in every other sport. Can we just be good in football? We're good in volleyball. We're good in tennis. We're good in track and field. We're up until this year really, really good in baseball with the most College World Series appearances of all time. And then basketball is starting to get on that track too. And now football is finally there. Like last year was really good. And I know people are questioning whether Steve Sarkisian can keep it going, but I thought he did a really good job at Washington. If you want to debate the USC thing, that's fine. Obviously, he solved his issues off the field from them. So I think we can definitely be that under Steve Sarkisian. I think he even saw that with his comments about the Alabama job, saying, I considered it for 60 seconds, but I want to see this through. This is too good of a situation. So I definitely think we're in that conversation.
I think what might be a huge determining factor going forward is how the money's distributed. So if going forward and paying players, it's just another version of the Wild Wild West, then Texas has a huge advantage just because there's a ton of Texas money and they love football and they're committed to it and they've got all that oil money. On the other hand, if whether it's the SEC and the Big Ten really get hold of all of this and it's run in more of a socialistic standpoint of let's distribute the money equally, you're still going to have the Texas of the world, supplement their programs with even more money, as opposed to, again, my first model was if we distribute money based on how much you're worth, how much you can just make on your own, and allow everybody just to be their own company, then that's going to serve Texas. That's going to serve the other programs we highlighted too, but even more so Texas because of the money that they have in that state, as opposed to, again, if this completely gets taken over by, let's say, the SEC and the Big Ten, and they form some kind of a league like the NFL, well, there's a reason that the Green Bay Packers can survive against teams from New York City because they all get the same amount of money. So they can sit in a town of 50,000 people and play for NFL championships because that's how they run the sport. Sonny here says LSU is probably just a notch below. Only school in a talent-rich state that is obsessed with the university, and they seem to have periods of success every few years. Well, yes, when LSU puts it together, when they've got a coach who has a functioning brain, who doesn't get in the way of all the talent that they recruit, they obviously go out and win national championships on occasion. But yeah, they get in their way most of the time. It's obviously a small state, but per capita, they produce more NFL players than anyone. And if you're looking at large cities that produce the most, it's Houston and it's Atlanta.
Yeah, and actually to hit on that, I think Texas and LSU are pretty similar. Like if you look at it, when they've had the right guy, they kind of dominate, and when they don't, they're just eh. And it doesn't even take like really an all-time great coach. I mean, no offense to Ed Orgeron, he's not an all-time great coach. He did really good in the transfer portal, bringing in Joe Burrow, and then also on that point with Sonny. Yeah, he's right. Like that whole state, if you look at the high school teams, they're all purple and gold, and a lot of them are named Tigers. So they're obsessed with that. I wish Texas could have convince some more high schools to be Longhorns with the burnt orange and white, but I don't think there's any like that. So that would have helped out with recruiting a little bit more, especially in the last like 10 to 12 years. I know people are saying, well, Texas always recruits well. Yeah, we recruit well to certain positions. We just now started to recruit offensive and lesser defensive line talent like we used to.
Yeah, that's a really good ploy by some of the large schools and some of the large states where they get the high schools wearing the same colors with the same look. And I don't know, it can't be proven, but you would just think that that would seep into your brain after 4 years of playing high school football, that those are your favorite colors and you're attached to them and you're emotionally attached. And maybe it gives you just that much of a lean in recruiting battles. And yes, John, you nailed it exactly. That was a shot at Coach O. That was a shot at Les Miles, but no, that was not a shot at Nick Saban and not a shot at Brian Kelly by me.
Hey, and by the way, I know we'll get into this later. I won't give it away, but you and I agree on Brian Kelly because I actually like 2 or 3 months ago was ranking SEC coaches, and I think I ranked Brian Kelly the second best coach in the SEC, I believe. So we agree on Brian Kelly.
Yeah, it's going to be now that he is at LSU and they still don't quite have the team put together. He inherited a pretty bad roster for what you would expect at LSU. So he's taken some time to try to turn over that program and that roster. And he's had, the last 2 seasons, I wouldn't say that he deserves a parade or anything, nor does he deserve to be criticized. He's pretty much done a good job, capable job with what they've had the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, Schwab. Dabo and Clemson. That's I don't think you can avoid using the transfer portal. You
No.
just can't survive.
I mean, that's if he doesn't win the ACC this year, then I don't know it. I mean, he probably will at some point if the ACC is still around, just because it's not a great conference. But it's going to be even more down this year because I don't think Florida State's going to be as good as they were last year. They should win it.
All right, folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, our Texas channel is up and running, and we've got content there, and we deliver this show over there, simulcasting right now on Mondays, right now, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. So we would hope that you would lock in over there.
Hey, Mark, could you pull up Edward McCoy's comment real quick?
Sure. What do we got from Edward here?
I'll make a bet with you, Edward. If that happens, I will shave my head live here on MarkRogersTV. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen.
Okay. First of all, where's the game?
It's at Texas.
Okay. And not that that should matter, but I was just curious. And then secondly, man, I never make promises like that, Matthew, unless I get something in return.
I mean, the problem is I know he's not going to do it. No offense, I don't know you, but most people that are saying something like this aren't going to do it. But if you want to, I have an invite. I'm sure Mark wouldn't care. You come on, you shave your head live here on Mark.
Oh, that'd be phenomenal. We promote that for forever. We could promote that for a good week, like nonstop.
Yeah.
The loser of the Florida Texas game, head shaved.
I'm down for it because it's not going to happen. But yeah, because we've looked at Florida's schedule. I'm sure I know you have, Mark, and like the last 6 to 7 games, it's rough. It really is. Like Billy Napier could go 5-7, and in my opinion, did an average job coaching. So
Yes.
it's just not going to happen. They're just not going to be good this year. And I think honestly, they should go down with the ship. I think DJ Lagway should start. Yeah, he should start at the beginning of the year. You're not going to get there's no upside to starting Graham Mertz. There's more upside to start him.
Oh, absolutely. There's more upside. But if Billy Napier believes that he can squeeze out 6 wins and save his job, then
Well, that's the thing too. Will 6 wins save your job? I think personally it should with the schedule, but I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine that Florida's like, you know what, 6 wins, you earned your job, you're good. It's hard for me to imagine that they're going to do that.
yeah, because he's already 6-7 and 5-7. So if he tosses up another 6-7, he's got 3 losing seasons in a row, or 5-7, whatever it turns out to be. But with that schedule, that's one of the most brutal schedules I've ever seen.
Yeah, and that's another reason too. I don't think Texas is the first stretch of that schedule. I think we're right in the middle of it. So that makes it even better for me. I get to play you right in the middle of your hard stretch of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, anytime somebody has wanted me to wear something, if somebody lost or presents those kind of things, I say, I'm a businessman and I need something in return. I just don't make wild bets where I can only lose in the situation. Like
You may have to,
I've got nothing to gain from winning, but I can
yeah.
lose and look like a fool if I lose. That's stupid. I'm not doing that.
Well, you may have saved me from myself, but I don't see him
Yeah,
commenting.
I don't either, but it wouldn't be the greatest upset in the history of college football.
No, it's
I
just hard for
think.
me to imagine because I mean, I personally think we're going to end up going 10-2. I don't know where the second loss is going to come, but I just we always tend to play down to competition a couple times a year, so I expect, especially in the SEC, to lose a game that we shouldn't.
That game is coming up on November 9th, and Florida plays Georgia the week before.
Yes. Oh, I'll take that bet. And then who do they play after?
LSU.
Yeah, I like my chances with that game. So
Florida's last 7 at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Texas. Why doesn't it say at? Let me start over. At Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, at Florida State. Yeah, that's a rough go after taking on Georgia. I would think that if at that point in the season, I'm going to guess Florida should be, let's say they are probably going to be like 3-5.
I mean, they're out of conference. It's hard too. They play Miami and UCF. So it's rough. Like I said, I went through the upside and downside of every schedule. What I thought their bottom was. I think Florida could possibly, like, the worst I could possibly see them doing is winning 2 games, and the best I could see is 6-6. I don't see anything better than 6-6.
So the first month of the season, they've got Miami, Samford, Texas A&M, and Mississippi State. Do they go 2-2? Most likely.
Yeah, that's why 2 to me is the bottom. Yeah.
Then the bye. Then UCF, Tennessee, Kentucky.
They could lose all 3 of those games, but I don't.
Throw them a
Let's
win.
let's give them a win.
They've got UCF at home, so they're 3-4. They lose to Georgia. They're going to Texas at 3-5, and Texas is going to be 8-0 or 7-1. You would
Yeah.
think. Texas is probably going to be
2 touchdown favored.
Yeah, I was going to go a little higher, but yeah, whatever it's going to be, 17, 18.
I mean, yeah, I just don't see it happening.
All right.
Wow, leaving it with that one.
Yeah, that one just stood out to me. Floor. People's floors are, I don't know if we would keep track of people's stated floors for these teams, I think we would be building a lot of basements.
Yeah. Moose, I think it's more like 8-4 and 11-1 is your top.
Yeah. All right, folks. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Again, it's every Monday with Matthew, with myself, 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. Please check out the Texas channel. And as Matthew tells you where you can find him and all that good stuff, I'm going to put the Texas channel handle in the comments section.
Yep, you can find me at Matthew MS97 on Twitter. I'll basically all I talk about is sports. That's all you're going to see me tweeting about. Baseball, basketball, football. Don't really watch soccer, but those are the 3 ones you'll see about. I'll talk Yankees, if you want to hear that, because I am a Yankees fan. I know Texas and Yankees, I know, but I'm a Broncos fan, and we did come out with some horrid uniforms today, and we're going to be terrible next season. So you can poke fun of me on that as well.
Check out the Texas channel. The link's in the chat right now. All right, good stuff, Matthew. Appreciate you doing this, and we will be back next Monday, everyone, for Horns Huddle number 3. We'll see you then.
Yep, see you guys.